Hello actors, welcome back to my channel. I'm the British acting coach, and I've decided to not blur my background today and give you the real deal. This is my family home, and yeah, you can see it in all its glory. So this week was slightly different, you may have noticed, in terms of the audition piece that I have shared with you. If you are yet to watch it, please go back and watch it now. Pause this video and come back to it once you've watched the audition self-tape in its entirety, just so you can experience what it would be like as an audition panelist and also as an audience member watching that piece as a standalone on its own and enjoying it. My mum's got two statues of two children piggybacking in the back garden, and I just made eye contact with one, and a bit like that angel, weeping angel zombie thing in Doctor Who, I just got a bit of a, I swear it just moved and looked at me. Anyway, I'm going to try and block that out a little bit. There's my top that's drying. Let's just, there we go. So although I've just put up the white rabbit, I actually had two other characters to learn for this piece. And of course, it's quite obvious. And well, it's not necessarily obvious. If you don't know, you don't know. But the white rabbit is a very prominent character in a story called Alice in Wonderland, which you may be familiar with because Disney did a version, an animation. Tim Burton done a wonderfully outrageous version with live animation and people, and it's a story that is always regurgitated and used and experimented with and played about with, and it's often on in some way, shape or form in the UK in some theatre. And I think one of the reasons Alice in Wonderland has lasted so long and is a story that we come back to all of the time is because it is absurd, it is fun, it's a story about exploration and growth in all the ways. And I think it's a really exciting story. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite. I think I personally don't love it. Some people are really hardcore Alice in Wonderland fans, and I am just so not that person. Maybe that came through in the audition self-tape. Maybe you noticed that. I hope what didn't come through the audition self-tape is all of the frustration, especially in the White Rabbit, that I had because I decided to commit to the action that was written in the script, and it actually was a pain in the bum because you'll hear audibly I was making choices that I think, you know, maybe would have done differently now, but we'll come to that. Yes, it was tricky. It was just very tricky, and I kept messing stuff up, so I was getting frustrated with that one. But then I remember putting it to bed and being happy with the take that you've seen on this channel and just cracking on with the next one, which I think the next two are my favorites. I enjoyed playing those a little bit more. That being said, the White Rabbit is a, well, in this story, in this script that I did, was a leader who was aiding us on this story. They were taking us under their wing or their rabbit paw on the journey, right? So there had to be a warmth, I think. I decided to make them quite a warm, welcoming character. Not only is the script lending itself to that, but because the other characters I had to play and demonstrate in the showreel, in the self-tape, were not warm, really. They were a little bit more out there. And so that's what I wanted to demonstrate in this self-tape, which did I do successfully or not? Who knows? I also wanted to touch on the fact that this is clearly Alice in Wonderland because it is absurd, it is big, and it is out there, and it is crazy, and it is, above all things, I think, a very theatrical story. And the reason I want to bring this up again is just to remind you that some characters are going to require you to be more theatrical. And it's a common thing I see debated on acting channels, you know, in praise of subtle acting. Yes, there's a time and a place and a style for that. Subtlety is so important and has to be there. However, if you take, I think I've mentioned it on my channel before, actually, Johnny Depp's characterization of the Mad Hatter in Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, there is an absolute sincere vulnerability in there amidst the chaos of his madness, right? And that is good performance to me. Just because it's big doesn't mean it can't be rooted in truth. And some of the best actors on this planet are amazing comedians and very good at comedy, but they can do it all. And I'm very passionate about teaching actors not just to be these one-trick Z-list celebrities who can do one thing. We want to be able to tell hundreds of different stories through hundreds of different voices and hundreds of different bodies and experiences. So although you might think this is really theatrical, this is really big, it's Alice in frickin' Wonderland, okay? So I'm actually recording this video in 2 parts. I've got to go now in 5 minutes. I have a line run and I just want to do a quick little extra bit of articulation warm up. And then I will be back to watch the self-tape back and record my feedback, pop in that coaching hat back on and walking and talking you through the White Rabbit. See you in a bit. Okay, fab. So I actually haven't watched this back at all since I uploaded it for the audition. So this is going to be hilarious. Let's see what happens, shall we?
Perfect timing. Welcome, welcome. Come, come. This is Wonderland. It's a wonderful place, if you don't mind a bit of nonsense. Right. If we're to find Alice, we should most probably split up. We're sure to find her quicker that way, aren't we? Now, there are 2 paths which lead through Wonderland. However, if we're to fit through either of those doors, there's a little something we need to do first. You there? You look like a responsible gentleman. What's your name? Pleasure to meet you, Sterling. I'm Mr. W. Rabbit. Now then, Sterling, take this key to unlock that door. But not just yet, Sterling. You're far too big. You'll need to take a sip of this. There you are. And I'll take a bite of this, which should make me small enough to fit through that door. Ready? Chin chin, old bean. My, you are very trusting, aren't you, Sterling? You know you should always check to see whether a bottle's marked poison or not. Honestly, common sense in parents is lacking these days, isn't it? I think mine's working. Oh, yes, no, don't worry, it's not poison, Sterling. It tastes like cherry tart and pineapple, custard, roast turkey. Oh, and hot buttered toast. How's yours? Great, lovely. I guess you're ready then. Are we ready? Are you excited? Let's go find Alice.
What fun, eh? Little flashbacks were coming up as I was watching that back. There were so many points in that moment, in that tape, where I thought things maybe weren't quite going according to plan. But you have to remember, this piece is clearly a theatrical piece. I was addressing lots of different people in the room, and there was clearly there's going to be a lot of improv in this production that I was auditioning for. It's a very well-known production. Most of you have probably heard of it. And I was like, well, I've got license to do that. And if I need to do it in the real thing, now's an opportunity to show them that I am capable of doing that in my audition. And so, for example, just to kind of summarize, or give you an example of that point, the name of the dad that I was talking to, I think I was going to give them something else, but Sterling came into my head. So I went with that and I called them Sterling. And that kind of also really fitted the clipped, heightened, old bean RP accent that I was kind of delivering as the White Rabbit. So it's just funny how these things kind of come up and stick and happen. But that's the magic of theatre. That's the magic of acting. That's the fun thing about it, I think, like having these ideas and running with them and seeing what happens. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. And as you would have noticed, the key, then the potion, then the cake, which was a mince pie. This was, I think, December time I was doing this. Lots of business, right? And I decided to commit to doing that business. I didn't want them to just see my shoulders or like, you know, a shot with a framing like this where they couldn't see all of this happening, because it was playing a rabbit, I made sure that most of my body could be seen, so that when I gestured out and picked these things up and gave them to people, you could see all of that. And I did practice making sure you could see the key, and it came closer in the shot there, and I dropped it, and the potion as well. Like I made sure that was all in there and working okay, as good as it could in a self-tape. And I did have to do this all on my own as well. So there was no one who could read in with me. There was no one I could use for eyeline or to catch things or anything like that. I had to do this completely solo. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. Let me just get it back up again so we can have another little watch and work through it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I kept me walking in on purpose. I wanted them to see me come in and almost feel like I was in the room with them a little bit more. I didn't want to just open up the shot with me straight away, immediately in character. I wanted them to feel that kind of warmth and that physical, not physical awareness, but that spatial awareness and quality that you do get only when you are in the room with a panel. So here we are.
Perfect timing.
And so that I added in because I know, from what I know of Alice in Wonderland and the little bit of research that I did do before this, the White Rabbit is late. I'm late. I'm very, very late or whatever. There's a watch and there's a clock watching quality about him. So I made sure that I used my watch. I didn't have any other clock or watch, and I thought it would be quite a nice physical thing to kind of open up and we're like, there we are, we're ready to go, we're starting the show kind of energy. And real joy, as you can see, there's real joy there in having these people arrive. And I assume this is the start of the show and the start of the journey for the audience members. And so we do want to have it quite welcoming. And in fact, as I was developing this character, I did begin with him Scottish. So I was working on my Scottish accent and implementing a Glasgow accent that I've been working on for the last few weeks. It wasn't very, well, I say for the few weeks. I started working on it in the summer and I was just kind of touching and dipping into it. But I found that the accent was actually just tripping me up too much. And because I knew I had to do 2 more characters after this with 2 more different actions and physicalizations and all of that sort of stuff, I was like, I'm just going to drop the accent and go with RP. But I didn't want to go with heightened RP initially. I actually really, let me just make my picture bigger I don't know if that reads. I really wanted to keep it warmer. So I was going for a wee Glasgow accent for the White Rabbit, but it didn't work. I wasn't feeling confident with it. And I was cutting takes because I was annoyed at my accent rather than my character choices. So what I wanted to do when I did the rabbit now is I wanted to make sure that it was a welcoming, heightened, clipped, old bean RP rather than a frightfully disruptive, very dry, regal, we're not here to have any fun RP. I wanted it to be a warm, welcoming, delightful RP where we could all be in it together, old chum. I wanted it to really have that sense of camaraderie. And you might have noticed as well a bit of military about it, which is another reason I think Sterling came up in my brain, because of Rogue Heroes. Sterling was the name of the guy who founded the SAS. I was really thinking, okay, I want to make this feel like an almost warm military old White Rabbit, which I think as well is quite fitting because of the context of the play, the time it was written, the story, the book. That I thought it was all quite fitting. So I feel like I went around the houses there, but that's just a little insight into what I was thinking in terms of the characterization. Like I said, I quite enjoyed that I hopped into screen and had quite a wide physicality. I wasn't just looking at my watch like this or casually like I would in real life. If I'm checking my watch as Pippa, I will quickly look. I won't place and look and get that epaulement. Is that the phrase? Shoulder action in there. But I did for this because it's a rabbit. And it's another thing to think about: physicalization, animal studies. I used to have pet rabbits, and you can see from the off, and I think this might be a bit of a bad thing because it kind of looks like I'm nervous, but I'm not. I was doing a lot of this business because rabbits do this, always kind of like paw things a little bit, and they wash their faces, and where I was excited about the food and the cake and the magic potion and everything, I was stroking here, but it started building a rash. So you can see there's a little rash there. It wasn't nerves, it was because I kept doing this, and hopefully they clocked that. Don't want to think I was, you know, that nervous for this self-take. It's just stuff to be aware of. I probably would have covered that up with makeup if I had a bit more time. But yeah, I was really going to town on the physicalization of the rabbit. And although you can't see my feet, you will see I'm hopping a little bit in my foot placement, and you'll see there's a shift of weight as I'm going through. And it's not, I'm not drawing loads of attention to it, but this is all stuff that's going to make, well, just show that I'm aware of that sort of thing as an actor.
Welcome. This is Wonderland.
Hands behind the back.
It's a wonderful place, if you don't mind a bit of nonsense. Right. If we're to find Alice,
there's a prime example. Right. And I've moved my feet because it's a change of energy. Oh, if you don't like a bit of nonsense, ha ha ha, it's a bit silly here, isn't it? But we have a mission. We have to go. So I moved my foot in position to give me a little bit more of a hop into action, a spring in my step to move the story. And literally, because this is a promenade piece of theatre, move the audience along and get them ready to go and start this journey and this adventure with us. So we'll just watch that again.
A bit of nonsense. Right. If we're to find Alice, we should most probably split up. We're sure to find her quicker that way, aren't we? Now, there are two paths which lead through Wonderland.
Good. So I'm really spelling it out physically. There are two paths, and I'm visualizing them very clearly. A door there. I remember spending ages thinking there's a door there and there's a door there, and we need to use one of these doors. And, you know, I could have just said, oh, there are two paths, or there are two paths to Wonderland. But I gestured to them again, just so they've got, the panel have got an understanding that as an actor leading the scene and leading an audience who are not rehearsed ready, who have not been involved in this story before, who don't know what to expect, who are parents with pushchairs, probably carrying children around who don't really get it either. I'm really trying to spell it out with my gestures and my physical storytelling, so that even if you couldn't hear what I'm saying, you can read the story. Really similar to my third tape, right, as well, like the messenger that we looked at. You could tell without me saying anything what my status is. With this, you can tell, I mean, you can't tell that there are two parts and we need to pick one, but you can tell that I'm explaining something, and there's two kind of choices that have to be made here. Good, let's carry on.
Quicker that way. Now, there are two paths which lead through Wonderland. However, if we're to fit through either of those doors, there's a little something we need to do first. You there, you look like a responsible gentleman. What's your name? Pleasure to meet you, Sterling. I'm Mr. W. Rabbit.
Good, nice little pride of who he is there. I quite like that. You'll notice when I interact with the parent, my imaginary parent that is there, I absolutely imagine that they're answering me and I see them answering me. If you're talking to anyone ever, you've got to listen to their response, unless you're playing a character who doesn't, which is actually really, really hard. It's easier to listen and imagine that you're listening than not. I don't understand how some actors don't do this or don't think about this, but you've really got to process what information is being given and interact with people truthfully and generously. You have to truly listen. And so I think here I was really imagining, and I pictured the person, like how they would look, and what kind of child they'd have with them. Of course, this was like a family show. This was a promenade family show. And I really pictured them responding like, oh, my name's Sterling, because people don't normally want to get picked out as well by an actor in a play or whatever. It's quite daunting for the normal person who comes to see theatre but doesn't do it. They're not as brave as us actors, right? They're not as confident as us to step up in front of a room, especially British people, stand up in a room of other people and join in. So yeah, I really was listening and imagining listening to this person called Sterling, who I just met, sharing their name with me. And I wanted to welcome them into the story and become part of the storytelling process with me.
You look like a responsible gentleman. What's your name? Pleasure to meet you, Sterling. I'm Mr. W. Rabbit. Now then, Sterling, take this key to unlock that door. But not just yet, Sterling. You're far too big. You'll need to take a sip of this. There you are. And I'll take a bite of this, which should make me small enough to fit through that door.
So as well, do you see, I'm calling back to what I've already gestured. There's two ways into Wonderland. Sterling, you are going to take this key, which will unlock that door. And then you're going to take this potion so you can fit through that door. I will eat this so I can go through that door. And again, physically wise, I kind of get a bit smaller here just because I didn't want to point too far off screen, just like I'm doing here, which I think I would have done if I'd stepped forward and done whatever, right? So yeah, just stuff to be aware of.
Ready? Chin chin, old bean.
Good. And so there I ad-libbed that there because I would. If I was acting this piece and there was a moment where I was like, okay, we're both going to, like with Cheers, we would do that. Chin chin, old bean. That's exactly like a phrase I would use to get into this kind of accent and character. Oh, chin chin, top me up, old bean. Oh, don't be so silly, Sterling. Let's move. You know what I mean? Like I would do all of that. So yeah, so I kept that in and again, acted as if I was really speaking to someone and encouraging them to do something that I was asking them to do as the actor taking control of the scene and encouraging this person to come out of their shell and join in the fun and the magic and buy into it a little bit more in a warm way that doesn't attack them and make them feel like, you know, they're stressing. There was something else I was going to say about that. Oh yeah, the thud of the props.
This key to unlock that door. But not just yet, Sterling. You're far too big. You'll need to take a sip of this. There you are. And I'll...
So you can hear the prop drop. And that's fine. I think, again, I think they would understand that not everyone would have a reader or, you know, I think they would... And I don't even mind, but I wanted to use the props. I wanted to make sure that I actually had the thing rather than miming. I think it's just really crap when you mime these things, especially when we've all got a key at home. We've all got something we can eat and we've all got like a little, like that was just nail polish. But I bought that bottle in particular because it actually looks like a little potion bottle. And in Shakespeare and in lots of plays, little potions and little perfumes are actually really prominent. So I thought that could just be a useful prop. Once I've used all the nail varnish in it, I can rinse it out and use it as a little, you know, a vial. So I wanted to use those to make it feel a bit more realistic. And again, also show, because I bet most people didn't do that. That's not why I did it, but it shows I've got a physical awareness and that I understand that I'm good at like, okay, keys here, that's here, da 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 da. And this kind of show again is gonna involve a lot of presetting your own props, probably having all of these props, being able to run from one scene down to scene 5 and then have to meet a different audience or see Sterling again and remember that you've already met these people, so you're on a mission together, like all of that sort of stuff. I think just by using the props and actually really being quite clear physically, I'm going to eat this, it just shows that I can do the job fundamentally.
Take a bite of this, which should make me small enough to fit through that door. Ready? Chin chin, old bean.
And even that bite, I probably could have committed to that a little bit more, I think, but my mind was going at 100 miles per hour while I was doing all of this. So, but I enjoyed that little bite.
Which should make me small enough to fit through that door. Ready? Chin chin, old bean.
And chewing a little bit. That's what rabbits do. And then this. Again, that's what rabbits do. They often do that. I remember I used to watch them lick their hands and then they'd wash their faces. So again, that was actually that was a choice I made to be more rabbit-like. Those are my rabbits. Let's go.
Mama, you are very trusting, aren't you, Sterling? You know you should always check to see whether a bottle's marked poison or not. Honestly, common sense in parents is lacking these days, isn't it?
So that was ad-lib. That was Pippa comedy gold, genius coming through there, if you can call it that. yes, that whole, oh, you should check the label before you just drink something a stranger gives you kind of thing was in the script. But I added in that little joke again, just to kind of build the audience in again as well, because Sterling was my focus and I was encouraging Sterling to do stuff, but there's still like a room of what, 20 people, a lot of kids in the room as well, perhaps. So I wanted to make sure that I can include those. So I decided to add in a little joke about how stupid an adult is. Kids love that stuff, right? Oh my God, my dad, even I knew that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought it was quite a nice thing to do. And I pat myself on the back, big thumbs up from myself there as the acting coach, because I think it's a lovely bit of improv that shows that I'm still aware that there are other people in the room and I'm building rapport with them. And that this is, you know, it's for the parents, of course, but it's also for the kids. And I think that joke works on both levels. Common sense is lacking in parents these days, isn't it? That idea that the kids are smarter and that parents, they just, you know, they teach kids not to speak to strangers, right? Or don't take anything or eat anything from strangers. And yet here is an adult taking something from a stranger, doing exactly that thing. So I thought it was quite a nice touch. So I kept it in.
Darling, you know you should always check to see whether a bottle's marked poison or not. Honestly, common sense in parents is lacking these days, isn't it? Oh, I think mine's working. Oh yes, no, don't worry, it's not poison, Sterling. Oh, it tastes like cherry tart and pineapple, custard, roast turkey. Oh, and hot buttered toast. How's yours? Great, lovely.
Oh, great, lovely. That wasn't in the script, obviously. Not obviously, but that wasn't in the script. But I wanted to react to how he was finding it. Because again, like when you pull someone, and you might not have experience of this, but I've done a lot of, you know, up close comedy and improv with people that aren't actually actors in my throughout my career. And it's great fun. And there's got to be a level of understanding that these people might not know what to say and they will go red and they will get embarrassed. And so there, when like, how is yours? There's absolutely a gag there. There's a reason why the writer of this production has put that in there, because the adult, you know, I could wait for the adult to tell me what it's like, because they might be like, oh, I'd be like, tell me more. You know, I could, there's a room for play there. So I wanted to make sure I did play. Oh, great. Lovely. Because he might have said, oh, it tastes like paint wash. I was gonna say glue or paint brushes, like paint water, you know, when you're cleaning your brushes in that water. Anyway, you know, I'm like, oh, great. And I'm trying to bide my time to think of the next line as well. You might have seen I dried there. Totally dried. But again, it's an opportunity for me to think of the next line. And I could have just stopped the tape there and gone, oh, I've dried, oh God. But I didn't. I stuck with it and just kept, you know, stayed with Sterling and him explaining what it tastes like before I move on to the next thought and thing.
I guess you're ready then. Are we ready? Are you excited? Let's go find Alice.
And then I hop off of screen. How cute. But I think that's a really nice touch. I really enjoy that. I think, again, all things considered, how much they were asking. This is the most I've been asked for in a self-tape, I think. Well, no, it's not. But this was a lot to be asked for. And you'll see in the other tapes that I upload over the next coming weeks, you'll see this was a lot to figure out and think about in a very short amount of time. I also really enjoyed playing around with the physicality here. I love playing around with physicality. I think it's such a fun way to experiment and explore as an actor. And even as part of your rehearsal process, exploring physically what you can do, even if you don't use all of it, it just adds a dimension to your character that I think most people miss. I think it works really well personally. I liked it. What else was I going to say about this ending?
Oh, great. Lovely. I guess you're ready then. Are we ready? Are you excited?
Yeah, so there I really kind of, God, look how I look like a crazy alien. I really took time in again, and I made sure my eyeliner was a little bit lower to show that I'm talking to the children. Are you ready? Are you excited? Let's go. Like, I was really trying to embody that excitement and punctuate clearly. We're going on to the next chapter now. We're moving on. And again, that's why I kept in that hop off screen to show that I'm leading, I'm moving, we're going. I didn't just stand there and then fade to black in this self-tape. I wanted them to show that I would physically move. I can commit to moving and driving the story forward. That's what's so important in a role like this, in a story like this, for the audience this is for, in a piece of promenade theatre. So there we go.
Great. Lovely. I guess you're ready then. Are we ready? Are you excited? Let's go find Alice.
Final thing I want to point out, the backdrop. That's not a plain wall, is it? No, we have these curtains in our apartment. We're living in a rental property. These are the curtains in the kitchen. And I thought they looked incredibly Alice in Wonderland, don't you think? So because I had to also read for the Queen of Hearts, as you will see in the coming weeks, I thought this background would be great for her. So I was like, oh, I'll use the curtains as the background for the Queen of Hearts, like I'm in her rose garden. But then I thought, actually, considering what they're asking me to do as the Queen of Hearts, I actually want a plain background, because I had an idea for, there was a little thing that they wanted us to do, but I had to use this certain prop that I had that matched the color of this, and I wanted it to pop out more. So you'll see that in the self-tape next week. I think it's next week you'll see that one. And I really enjoyed it. I would have definitely added more layers to it, but we'll talk about that next time. This background wouldn't have worked for her, basically. And because I knew I was going to wear the white shirt as the White Rabbit, I thought that background that I'm using here would show that off a little bit better. So as you can see, my physicality and my colors, I look almost white against this red backdrop, and it just adds to the kind of magical forest, wood, garden kind of vibe, and I really enjoyed that. So I kept that in. I wouldn't necessarily do that all the time, but we happen to have that backdrop, and I thought, oh, it works really well, I'm going to use it. So don't be afraid to be creative in your self tapes as well. I think, you know, of course, like a plain background and all that sort of stuff is really important, but sometimes you've got to make do with what you have got. And this actually helped tell that story and add a sense of, like, I'm a rabbit in a burrow taking you on a journey. So I quite enjoyed it. But overall, I thought this self-tape was a nice bit of fun. I probably would have picked up the pace a little bit. I would have probably done it a few times, but out of all the 3 characters I had to do in this self-tape, this one took me the longest to do, because, well, there was still props and puppeteering in the other audition pieces I had to do, but this one I found particularly tricky, I think, because I was trying to help someone move along with the story, and I knew there was lots of different, it was just different and a little bit trickier. So I knew I had to press on, otherwise I'd get more frustrated and tired as well. This was a Sunday afternoon after a really long week, and Sunday was meant to be my day off. So I knew I had like a whole 10 days back-to-back work, no days off coming up as well. So you have to kind of sometimes take a step back and go, right, what I've done is actually solid. Yes, I could do it better, but this is the audition process, especially for a show like this, which was a theatre run, where we would have rehearsals, probably not very many rehearsals, but we'd have rehearsals, and it would be different every time depending on the audience that came through. And I would have to do that scene 20 times a day as we churn through the audience members and refunnel them through. I knew that it would be okay, what I showed them, and more than okay. I think I did a really good job in that self-tape. Again, not blowing my own trumpet, but just to give credit where credit's due, I thought it was solid. I enjoyed the physicalization, and as someone watching it, I feel like if that wasn't me, I feel like there's a competent performer there who is happy making a bit of a fool of themselves, isn't too worried about messing up, and has got some physical awareness and improv experience, which is exactly, again, ticking all the boxes for this job. So yeah, I really enjoyed this self-tape. I thought it was really good fun. Like I said, it was a really big challenge and they really wanted a lot from us, but It was well worth it, and I would love to play some sort of part like this. I love multi-rolling anyway and playing lots of different characters. I love rep theatre. It's one of the best things an actor could ever do to hone in their craft. But for something like, I'd love to do a Tim Burton kind of like, you know, character and play with the costume and the CGI and have all of that on film, collaboration that goes on with these sorts of heightened comedy tragedies and magical, you know, Harry Potter-esque kind of films. I'd love to do something like that and play around with that and have the opportunity to have a character, play one character throughout a whole film and play with that. So anyway, really, really enjoyed it. I hope you all have a lovely day. Come back next week for the next self-tape. I hope you are enjoying this self-tape series as much as I am. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Late July with the sun up high, the cicadas sing as the weeks drop by. I read all day in a hammock sway, time like molasses and melts away. Need to beat the sleepy sweet heat.